Alright guys, back on the Charger today. Here's a rundown of some of the issues that I ran into when I was swapping from the automatic to a 4-speed manual in my 70 Charger. First thing you guys gotta do is, I got the steering column out right now, but you gotta get down in there and weld the bracket in there for that, okay? And which bracket I'm talking about is the one that's all the ways down in there, that guy. Okay, you gotta weld that in there, which for me was actually quite easy at the time because I had the engine out, because I was also swapping from a small block to a big block. We can cover that in another video. What I'm doing today is I'm just giving you a rundown of some of the things that I deal with. With this being a 70 car, there are some issues on the relay for the starter, okay? Now with that, it runs a neutral safety switch. I don't know if the 68 or the 69 had that. I don't think they did. So you got a neutral safety switch, which is built into your relay for the starter, okay? So you got an extra wire here, which runs down to the neutral switch. So the neutral switch has for reverse lights and also neutral. What I'm doing with it is, you're supposed to run it up and onto the clutch. So when you push the clutch, it doesn't, it will start, and if the clutch isn't pushed, it won't start. I'm gonna wire it into a toggle switch and hide it for safety reasons and security reasons, to make it harder for somebody to steal the car, because then there's another switch that they need to activate to make the car start. I always push a clutch, and I'm used to driving a clutch when I drive a manual, so I'm not worried about that. That way it just keeps you from starting it in gear. So anyway, you got to get back in there, weld that bracket in. Okay, that's one thing with the car that you got to do, and that's another thing you got to deal with that. You might have some issues getting in there to get down in there to get the bolts out, but there's a fair amount of room, so it's not a big deal to get in there and remove the bolts. You're going to have to deal with that. You also have to go inside the car and change out your swing pedals to a set with the clutch bracket. Okay, because the original set does not have a clutch on it. So I got a set of swing pedals that had the clutch assembly, and the other ones, it's got all this extra stuff on this side, the spring. You also have to drill your firewall for that, so that way you can put the extra bolts in, because it takes 2 extra bolts on it. So you can see them holes there. So you got to drill that for that. Then you also have to cut the floor for the shifter. Now if you're using an original shifter, you do not need to do what I did here with all this extra cutting. But what I'm using is, I'm using a Competition Plus, or Quick Shift as it's called. It's basically a short throw shifter in the car, so that way I don't have the long handle that comes up to here. Now this might cause some issues. I still got to figure out if it's going to cause issues with my seat, because I currently have my seat out. But it might cause, this shifter might cause some issues with my seat, and it also might cause issues if you have a, well, if you have a bench seat, I don't know if you'll have an issue with the original shifter or not. But if you have the optional middle seat, that would probably cause an issue with that because of the location of it. So that's one thing to think about. The drive shaft, I don't know if you're gonna, I think you have to change that too. With me, I had to change it anyway, because I went from a 8 1/4 to 8 and, I think it's an 8 3/4. I went to the bigger rear because my car was originally a small block car. So that's a couple things to think about. I'll have to look, and I will post that up in the video. I'll pull out my sheets again with Driveshaft Links. I think you do have to change the drive shaft, best I can remember. But you can look up online. There's sheets all over that have the Driveshaft Links, depending on what engine and transmission, and the rear axle. That's your big thing, is rear axle actually and transmission you're running. Another thing to think about too is with your transmission is what type you want. There's the 833s, and that's what I'm running. But there's a couple different variants of them. Some that are standard 4-speed, and then you get into the later ones which have an overdrive in them. And I got a 69 transmission. That brings me up to another point. The Crossmember. If you have a 70 car, you need to get a Crossmember for a 70 car. Because the bolt holes that mount it, that mount the Crossmember, these bolt holes here, are different sizes. Okay, these are 3/8 on the 70, and on the 68 and 69, they are a 1/2 inch, I believe. They're bigger. And also, you could take your automatic, if you have a 70, you could take the automatic, cut it, and mount it in there, because it does have the hole already drilled. You can modify yours if you want. What I did is I bought one already done. You can buy them online. So this is my automatic that I pulled out. So I had the 904, not a 727. So I pulled that out with the 318 small block, because I put a big block in the car. So that's about the best rundown I could think of. So you're going to need swing pedals, transmission, drive shaft, Z-bar linkage, clutch, flywheel. I'll make a more in-depth list. I'll sit down and write down a list and put it in the comment section, just to give you an idea of the main things you're going to need, because there's a bunch of parts you need for it to do it. But the funnest thing is getting in here and mounting that bracket down in there. You'll probably have to pull some other stuff out to get to it and do all that. But like I said, you're gonna have to, of course, drill holes. You can buy the plates, which sit in there, right there, and have the holes already in them. I'm just gonna use a piece of rebar, some bolts, put it in there, and be done with it. I don't feel like spending the money for the plate. I'm trying to save the money, do a budget build. This whole car has been a project for me. I picked it up with a 318 in it, drove it around for a while, then the 318 decided it wanted to start smoking really bad, so I said I'm going to build up 440 I got sitting, put a manual in here, and make it into what I want. So, trying to think about anything else. You've got transmission lines you're going to have to pull out. There's a bunch of lines. I guess you could cut them and leave them if you want it. I would just pull them out. I don't like having a bunch of extra lines laying around. When you do it, maybe if you want, you could think about upgrading your radiator. This is something else to think about too. Is your car an original car? Is it a numbers matching car? You know, if you care about that stuff, maybe you don't want to change your transmission. But you can if you go through and find date-coded stuff. I mean, but it's not going to be original anymore unless you keep all the parts to put back. So that's what you got to think about, is if you want it to be date coded or not. Me, I'm not really worried about it. My block's a 72 block. The transmission's a 69 date code transmission. The swing pedals are from a 69 too. So I was able to find most of that stuff in one lot that somebody had. I guess either parted out a car or put an automatic in a 4-speed car. Also with the transmissions, to think about is, are you going to want to go with an 18 spline or a 23 spline? That's something to think about. The 18 splines are they're a lot more expensive. You can pick up a 23 spline cheaper, but with that being said, it's quote-unquote a weaker transmission. I'm running a 23 spline behind my 440, just because that's what transmission I could find. I might twist that shaft, I don't know. It is definitely possible. It's a weak link in the car. So it'll be what it'll be. If I tear it apart, I'll pull it out, rebuild it. You can buy the parts cheap, or you can find them online all over. That's about it. So I'm still working on doing my engine swap and getting that all done. I'll make another video later talking about some issues I ran into with just doing the engine swap itself. Not too hard, just a lot of little stuff on that. Well guys, thanks for watching my video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment, question, like, subscribe to my channel. If you guys ask questions and I can answer them, I'll definitely try to. And you know, like this video here, I'm actually making for a guy on a forum that's thinking about doing the swap and was asking me a bunch of questions, and figure I'll make him a video and try to tell him some issues, show him some pictures, and hopefully, you know, you guys will, you know, like it, subscribe, and ask questions, and I can answer them, and hopefully keep you guys happy, I guess. I don't know. Well, thanks for watching.